Dear eventing friends, I'm David O'Connor and I'm the current FEI eventing chairman. I'm pleased to welcome you to the FEI campus and our one-of-a-kind educational tool, which is updated with new and interesting and exciting content. I'm not going to guide you through the main amendments to the FEI eventing rules for 2019, which were approved in the GA at Manama in November 2018. The first rule that we looked at was the structure, which has been a conversation that's been going on for a number of years. The new format structure of changing eventing into a 5-star structure instead of the 4-star structure which we had before. There's reasons for this of making all disciplines equal, and that has worked very well. And what is added was the new 1-star level, which was at the bottom, which countries around the world were asking for, a new level of meter 5. Instead of going higher, we decided to add the lower for the development countries to be able to use this tool, which is something, again, that they've asked for over these last couple of years. We look like this is going to be very successful, and I would say that this is not part of a qualification system to go up. You can start your MER and qualification system at the new 2-star level. The other change has been the difference between having a CIC and a CCI. Always very confusing around the world. And we have now just had one format. We call it a CCI, and we call it a CCI long, or we call it a CCI short. The CCI short replaces the old CIC. So again, even me talking about it sounds confusing, but what we're trying to do is make it more simple by having CCI long and short formats be the way for the future. The next rule that we changed in 2019 is under Chapter 6, and that's the athletes and the horse welfare. And the change was under the dangerous riding side of the equation. After 3 clear refusals, any form of elimination will entail a yellow warning card. We feel like going on after 3 refusals is something that the riders have to know. And they're clear refusals at fences, but they have to know and they have to take this seriously, because on those type of days, if something happens afterwards, everybody is going to be liable and you're putting your horse in jeopardy. The next rule that we've looked at was in Chapter 6 and still under the athlete and horse welfare issue. 525.2 on the warnings and penalties. We have changed this from a recorded verbal warning to just a recorded warning. So throughout the rules, the recorded verbal warning has been changed to a recorded warning. Any sanctions applied must always be reported by the technical delegate to the FEI and added onto the athlete sanction list. So it's more of a clarification than it was anything else. Still staying under horse welfare and athlete welfare is the use of the whip. There have been instances in these last years where it was felt that excessive use of whip has happened in some major high-profile competitions, and we wanted to give the ground juries more tools to be able to say this is excessive and what are the sanctions that this could be allowed for. So we've changed it that the whip must not be used any more than 2 times in one instance and not 3. A multiple excessive use of a whip in between fences and not fence related is going to be sanctioned. And if a horse's skin is broken or has visible marks, the use of a whip will always deemed to be excessive. We really felt like this was giving the ground juries the stricter options for what can happen out on the field. The next part of the athlete and horse welfare side is blood on horses. Now this is Article 526.4, and I really want to make sure that you go and look at this article and be very clear in the different disciplines that we do in eventing, dressage, cross country, and show jumping, because it's slightly different about who makes that call. In the dressage test, if a ground jury suspects bleeding on the test, on the horse during the test, he'll stop the horse to check. And then they can allow them to go on if they feel like it's not fresh, or the horse will be eliminated. For cross country, the key of it is having it athlete induced, which means the bit, the spur, or a whip. Those are the 3 things that basically, if a horse has minor scratch on him, okay, that is caused by a fence, right, that is not necessarily grounds for having a ground jury make an elimination. The jumping test is done by the ground jury and the officials, And they can stop a horse, and they can authorize rinsing or wiping the mouth or the side if it's a scratch. And if any further evidence of the blood in that type of situation, that will cause the elimination. So the ground jury has the discretion at that point to be able to do that in the show jumping test. So if something is happening, the cases indicating abuse of horse will be dealt with according to the provisions of Article 526.2, the abuse of horse, and the warnings and penalties that are related to it. Chapter 6, again staying under this athlete and horses welfare, a change to the recorded warnings and the yellow warning cards. That also is under Article 527. This also then gets into what happens with if there's minor blood on a horse, and it is a further definition of what happens earlier, and the definitions in the dressage, the show jumping, and the cross country. This is also goes on to say that it will be sanctioned by a recorded warning as a minimum. Could be stronger if the ground jury so decides. And all cases of excessive use of whip, as defined above in the article before, right, shall automatically be sanctioned with a yellow warning card, or could be stronger actions by the ground jury if deemed necessary. So it's a further definition of what is appropriate out onto a course, thinking in as the number one deal of horse welfare, horse welfare, horse welfare, horse welfare. Yellow cards and recorded warnings in 527. A yellow card, warning card will be systematically awarded if the athlete continues after the 3 refusals, as we've talked about. The blood rule, the same athlete receives more than one warning, this recorded warning, for a case of an athlete-induced blood on a horse within 3 years. And this is a difference. Within 3 years, he will automatically be issued a yellow warning card. And 2 of those yellow warning cards within a 12-month period for the same offense will result in a yellow warning card. So 2 warnings and you get a yellow card. 2 yellow cards, and that's going to lead into the next thing of what we talk about, suspensions. And again, in Chapter 6, in the horse and athlete welfare, the continuing side of the yellow warning cards and the recorded warnings, this is a change. So if someone gets a yellow warning card and at an international event within 1 year of the delivery of another yellow card for the same offense, the person responsible will be automatically suspended for a period of 4 months after the official notification from the FEI Secretary General. That's a change. It was 2 months before. We felt that these serious things by repeated offenses is more serious than what was being taken before, and the proposal straight across has been 4 months. Now we'll go on to the next topic, and we take Chapter 7, right, in the general competition rules. And we have looked at the list of bits for eventing and have decided that we're going to go in an independent list to the dressage rules. And the main reason for that is that in the dressage rules, most of the bits that they're talking about are in the form of a double bridle. And in eventing, it's mainly a snaffle sport. And so there wasn't enough definitions of what the snaffle was. And so we have really looked at that whole concept of what bits are and have proposed that in Chapter 7. So there, in Article 539.2, right, there is a detailed look at what the materials are, what permitted snaffles are, what are illegal, what are permitted mouthpieces and permitted cheek pieces, instead of getting away from naming each individual bit. And if there's not a picture of it, it's illegal. We're trying to make it broad. We're trying to make it the individual pieces of what we're looking for and what's appropriate for our dressage tests. Now, we've also looked at it from a risk management point of view. We've also looked at bits and their actions out on the cross country. And so for the cross country, any device which does not allow an immediate and unrestricted smooth separation from the athlete's boot from the stirrup, okay, is not allowed. We looked at neck straps, and there's a movement of neck straps going out on the cross country, which the eventing committee has no problem with. But we really felt that if something happened and an accident happened, that neck strap could move up the neck closer to the head, and then that could make situations worse. And so we have proposed that neck strap, if used on the cross country, must be attached either to the breastplate or to the saddle, only so it doesn't go farther up the neck and maybe a foot goes through or a rider gets caught up into it. That was the reason. And then again, from a risk management point of view for cross country, we've really felt that hackamores without a bit are not allowed, and the lower cheek on any bit that is out there must not exceed 10 centimeters on the lower cheek piece. Now that is the same as dressage, and we feel like the longer ones that sometimes get used and some that you see has a negative effect on the horse being able to travel to a cross-country fence in a safe way. Continuing on with the competition rules, in Chapter 8 we talk about the dressage test, and something that's happened over the last several years is the discrepancy sometimes on flying changes, and a lot of times that's just about the angle that the judges see it, and it becomes unclear. So for 4-star championships and higher level events, if the score only of the flying changes varies by 3 points or more from the average of the scores of the other judges for the same movements, the ground jury must review the official video after the dressage test on the same day, and corrections must only be made to the flying change. So it's not to the whole test, it's not to the other movements, it's only for the flying change movement. In case if somebody didn't see it, it was clear and there's a discrepancy of 3 points. That is the reason for it. The other big change for dressage, and this is in Article 544, 2.5, is that the collective marks, the 4 collective marks at the bottom of the dressage test are now being sent away and is being replaced by 1 overall impression of the athlete and the horse. And that will have a double coefficient. That's quite a change, but we really feel like that puts a parity to much more of what goes out on the dressage test for the overall impression, instead of just saying paces or submission or rider. So that was the reason behind that. Now we get into quite a complicated issue, right? And this is under Chapter 9, the cross-country test. And it's faults and obstacles. In the number of years, there was the thought process of that if somebody thought they jumped a narrow panel and didn't, they would get eliminated. And now we've really changed it, and if you jumped outside of that, flags, you were awarded 50 penalties. Over the last several years, the athletes have come back and said, if I had known that I had that, maybe I wouldn't have continued to go all the way around the course. And so we have really changed that. And the big change that we've done is try to change that penalty down to 15 penalties instead of 50. This keeps it under the MER, or whatever you need to require to qualify for the next level. So that is the big change. From the old time, it took you out of an MER, and now with this new system, if you miss it once, right, 15 penalties will still keep you in the MER program. We felt like it was just too strong, and the athletes were not happy with it. So now we're also looking at, with narrow panels, and this is the modern day sport, is to really look at how it's judged and to try to get any misunderstanding to go away, right? We feel like that all of the video evidence that is used in determining whether somebody has jumped a narrow panel, jumped a corner, that video evidence has to be official, and it has to be designated by the organizer. And so in Article 548.1, all official video recording can be used as evidence. Officials will clarify before the start of the cross country and inform the Schepterkeeps or the riders at a meeting or the briefing which video recording will represent the official view to avoid any misunderstanding. So it's not going to be somebody just off the public. It will be official recordings, video recordings that is done by the organizing committee itself. So in Chapter 9 for the cross-country test, the definition of a run-out is a new look at this. It has been a very controversial thing over the last several years of whether somebody has jumped a jump or not jumped the jump, and what's the definition of being inside a flag. I want to say always, right now, that it is always going to be a subjective call by the officials. First by the fence judge, and then by the ground jury. In some ways, it's always going to be subjective. That's where we are right now. So the definition changes into a run out. And a horse is considered to have run out which means you get 20 penalties if having presented at an element or an obstacle on the course, it avoids it in such a way, and this is new, that the body of the horse, the head, neck, shoulders, and pelvis, fail to pass between the extremities of the element. Now, it used to be just head, neck, and shoulders, and we felt there have been instances where the head, neck, and shoulders have gotten through, but the horse never jumped the fence. It was very clear that the horse never jumped the fence, and so we have changed this, that the body of the horse has to go through. Now, if you continue on course without representing in that situation where the horse has not passed through those extremities of the element, right, that is still elimination. So a definition of missing a flag. Again, a subjective call, we know that. A horse is considered to have missed a flag, which would cause 15 penalties, if the horse jumps the dimensions of the obstacle and the majority of the horse's body, as defined above, passes through the flags. This means that some part of the body might not be inside the flag, right? So in the end, if I'm jumping a fence here and my shoulder's onto the outside, you would probably get 15 penalties. Now, if both shoulders are outside, that means I'm going to get 20 penalties or possibly elimination if I go on. It is as clear as we feel like the language can come. So the horse will have successfully negotiated the fence if the body of the horse has passed through the fence as originally flagged. So the one thing is that if the body passes through, just here are your two flags, the body passes through and a leg goes out or a rider hits the flag with his foot, that is clearly going to be still judged as that you've been successful through the element. Also, in the cross-country test in Chapter 9, a change has been made to, and it's just further clarification, 549 3.2, obstacles composed of several elements. At an obstacle composed of several elements, a horse will be penalized once it has jumped the first element and before it has jumped the last element, A, B, C, D. It passes around the back of any element of the lettered combination that it subsequently jumps, or it crosses its tracks between the elements. And this is a clarification. The interpretation to the rules in this last years has been a little bit unclear. We just feel that you can't cross your tracks once you're in an ABCD, and you can't go around the back of a fence, which is consistent of how we do it now. You can't go around the back of a fence in order to jump that same fence. Now we go on to Chapter 10, which is the jumping test. And the change that we made here was about the balance between the three disciplines. 2 years ago now, the coefficient in the dressage went out. It used to be 1.5, now it's a straight percentage, right? So that changed the influence of the phases. And we looked at the influence of the phases all the way through using statistics and using equiratings to help us a lot at this model for this. And we decided that ends up that the show jumping time penalties are too strong, being 1 point per second. And so we've reduced that down to 0.4 per second for the show jumping, and we feel like that actually puts it better into a balance between the three disciplines that we do in eventing. So thank you for the rules and listening and trying to understand where we are going, but please be informed that this year we've created a short quiz about the rule changes for 2019. And we recommend that you take that quiz in order for you to make sure that you've understood the main amendments. And this quiz is available in the FEI Campus Eventing Hub. The FEI eventing rules, which were effective the 1st of January 2019, can be found on fei.org on the FEI Eventing Rules page. I encourage you to go onto the website and take the time to visit the horsemanship portal on the FEI campus, where you will find very interesting and useful information. New top knowledge courses are being published regularly. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and don't hesitate to invite your colleagues and friends to do the same on the FEI website. All of us involved in the sport at the FEI level or national federations are pleased about our sport, and we really do look forward to seeing you compete, officiate, or just attend our events during this year. And finally, keep in mind that the horses are always first. Horse welfare is always first. Thank you.